So I'm going to invite one of the pastors here in Lincoln, Paul Blundell, Joy's husband, to come and join me. Let's welcome Paul, shall we? So just before we break for lunch, we thought we would just finish this morning's session by taking a little bit of local context to how we can see this process working on a local level. Paul, we went through this process recently, didn't we? We did the 5D as a course for our church. In Lincoln, we have 3 locations of our church across the city, and we all came together and worked in our teams to really think about this idea of community transformation, didn't we? Paul, would you just like to tell us a little bit about the community that you are pastoring and what that looks like?
Great, and I'll be quick because it's lunch next, isn't it? And no one wants anyone to be too long. So we gathered together as the whole of Lincoln North, Central and South. And Joy and I lead in the North. And the north of the city is quite an interesting place in terms of its mix of communities. And so there's 2 main council estates that are there, which often get kind of quite a lot of focus. But around them are a number of new build estates in the city, kind of in a ring road. And then moving very, very quickly into the countryside to lots of villages, and where there's on the surface lots of kind of prosperity, kind of life growth, those type of things. We've also got the prison, we've got a hospital, industrial estates, other bits. And so you've often got this sense of the sweeping kind of north, kind of disconnected in certain ways with villages and communities. And so lots of interesting places for us to look at in terms of what's going on. Okay, yeah, great. So before we went through this process, what were your sort of hopes for the community? Yeah, I think, like all of us really, in terms of church ministry or church leadership, I think a fewfold really. Firstly, our hope was to actually connect with the community. And we want to reach out, we want to see needs met, we want to connect with people. There's that stirring, isn't there, that I think is from God. I hope it's from God. It's that sense that actually we want to meet some needs, we want to do something. I think that has to be there in terms of who we are. I think also alongside that, we wanted to develop a team or take a whole load of people from the location on the journey in terms of understanding this thinking. So obviously Joy is in our location, and so she helps quite a lot with some of that. But actually taking the whole location on that journey was something that we felt like we want more people to understand this a bit deeper and to get that. And also then to take that into their normal communities and workplaces and lives as well. And so this is like a broader aspect for us in terms of how do we meet church and community to connect, but also how do we train and equip people within the church to get this mindset and this thinking in their everyday lives. Amazing. So as a team, you went through this process. How did you find going through that process? What do you think you learned from that? Yeah, I think we loved it. We really enjoyed it. I think some of the best things was just seeing people come to life in terms of having a framework and an understanding of how we're going to reach out and connect with other people and why we're going to do that was so important for us. And that really quite naturally, just brought a team together. So we didn't have a team in the north. We were a new location, newly planted, and it just brought people out who connected together. And so a team was formed, which was wonderful. And so people connected in that. But also we began to get to the detail of what are the needs in the north of the city, not what we think and what we can see on the surface, perhaps even as we drive around or connect, but actually what is actually going on for people living on the ground. For example, there was one of the estates that we've connected with, what we found was that actually there's no community building, no church, no community hall, no green space, nothing, no space for people to connect together. And so we've highlighted that as an area for us to pray into, because as a church, we're not in a position to make a green space, build a building, or add community facilities. But what we can do first and foremost is pray. And so we're going to ask God to come and move in that place. That actually means that we can partner where we need to, but also believe that the council and other institutions have a role to play in solving some of those situations. So, yeah, we've really galvanised prayer for that area. That's amazing. What would you say has been the outcome for you as a group in doing this? And how might that have been different from what you thought at the start? Yeah, I think at the start, I guess it's like kind of in church life, you kind of get that idea of now we're going to go and make an impact, we're going to go and do loads of stuff. And I think in some ways our plan and our outcome feels, I've said to the team, sometimes feels a bit underwhelming sometimes, but it's very, very sustainable in terms of the sense of we know what the needs are that are out there. We know what the assets we have as a church. We've got a new team formed. And there are a number of projects in the city that as a location we wanted to connect to first, rather than just starting new projects ourselves. We wanted to put some foundations in for what's already existing. So there's a food bank project and a community grocery, which we said, let's connect into those things. Let's strengthen as a location our volunteer base there first. As I said before, we began to pray. So we're praying into a few key areas as a church, as a location. This is what we want to see for some of these areas. We have this new team brought together, and then we've got a few steps of a few courses that we want to run, some early stages in terms of connection with the community that will be our first steps over this next year, and a few things in mind that then we'll see how those things go. And they're based on then the needs and the assets that we've seen within the community and within the church. And so bringing those two things together just is wonderful. So it's quite slow, it's quite measured, but it feels very sustainable. And as we go for that, it strengthens what's already existing, but it begins to build on that moving forward over the next few years.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. Why don't we say thanks, Paul, for sharing. I think that's a good point, actually, Paul makes. I'm quite an activist type, and sometimes I just want to get going with stuff, but sometimes it's about having that patience to do a process, and when we're just raring to go, to actually think, no, actually, what if we want to do something that's right and that's going to last, we want to go through that process. One final story, really, about how we've seen this on a local level, before we break for lunch, is just picking up a point that Paul made about connecting with others, and recognizing that we don't have to do everything ourselves. There are others that we can work with, and the importance of partnership, and in particular the strength and the blessing that comes from church unity and working together with other churches. Here in Lincoln we have a group called Transform Lincoln, which is really exists as a way of facilitating churches coming together in lots of ways and working together. And one of the elements of working together is around social impact and social action, what we're doing together as churches. And it was really important to set up in this way because I remember one moment many years ago where I was invited to go and represent the churches in Lincoln at a council meeting. And I said, no, I can't do that. I can go and represent my church, but I don't know what's happening with all the other churches. And if I got some information to share with them, I wouldn't know who to share them with. And we were really challenged to go on a journey about, we do need to get ourselves organised. So actually we can represent each other. We do know what's happening in each other's churches. And also recognising that, we were a church who were running a food bank, but there were other churches also running a food bank. So why are we not talking together and learning from each other and sharing resources? And one of the amazing things that happened through that was we had one of the subgroups of 6 subgroups that we had was around health and well-being. How can we together as churches work together to support people with health and well-being, particularly around mental health? And we had a shared vision as churches together that we wanted to really support what was a growing problem of mental health in the city. Lincoln has a particularly high rate, higher than most of the country, for male suicide. What can we as churches working together do about that? And the fact that we became organised and we were relating together and connected together, and we began to show ourselves to the rest of the city that the churches are united in our vision, really caught the attention of local authority, of the NHS. And the NHS then approached us and said, we can see that you're organised together, that actually we can come and talk to one person and connect with all the churches. We really want to share in that vision about supporting with mental health. And we want to set up something called sort of mental health crisis cafes, so that every night there's somewhere open in the city where there's a light on and someone can come and meet with somebody who can just listen and befriend them and support them. So rather than going to A&E, which was the only other option, or the police having to get involved, they've got just somewhere they can go and have that friendship. And we think, this is the NHS talking, the churches would be brilliant to deliver this. Because you organise and you've got the facilities in the buildings, you've got the assets. And so they contracted with the churches to run what we called night light cafes. Isn't this great? Every night there is a light on in a church so that people who are struggling with their mental health have got somewhere to go, people who will love them and support them. And we have in Lincoln every night of the week, including Christmas Day, there is somewhere with a light on in the evenings in a different church around the city. And it's been incredible. There's 10 sessions that happen every single week. And people are coming here, and it's reduced the number of people turning up to A&E or police call-outs to deal with mental health, because instead people are going to church. Isn't that amazing? And we've had the number of people, I heard just this week about somebody who came through a nightlight cafe in a church, found faith and got baptized. Someone who got a job. Yeah, wonderful, isn't it? Someone who came with so low self-belief and has now gone on to found employment after many years. And it's all happening through the church because we've been organised and we're working together. So I just wanted to say that to you as an encouragement, that going through this process is great, but even better if you can do it in partnership with other local churches too.